Let's make my Lazy Days quilt pattern using a layer cake. Layer cakes are 10-inch squares, and for this pattern you will need 42 10-inch squares, yielding a 54-inch by 63-inch quilt. Using 63 10-inch squares will yield a twin-size quilt measuring at 63 inches by 81 inches, giving you a few more options. For each 10-inch square, you will cut two 5-inch squares and one 5-inch by 10-inch rectangle. And that's it. You'll just repeat this step to every single 10-inch squares for the quilt size you are making. Once everything is cut, you are going to select two 5-inch squares in mixed prints and sew them together to create a 5-inch by 9.5-inch rectangle. Next, select a different print in a 5-inch by 10-inch rectangle, and we will sew it to the right side of your block. It will be a tad longer, but afterward, we will square your block to a 9.5-inch square. If you aren't a fan of this method, you can trim your 5-inch by 10-inch rectangle down to a 5-inch by 9.5-inch rectangle instead, then sew it to your pieced rectangle. Either way, it will achieve the same outcome, but since I like to square up my blocks at the end, my first option avoids the second cutting step. And if you know me, I love quick and easy beginner-friendly blocks. So go ahead and repeat this until you have made enough for the quilt size you've selected. Once all of your blocks are made, you will lay them out in a 6 by 7 block layout or in a 7 by 9 block layout for the twin size quilt. For your odd rows, you will want your 5-inch squares on the left side, and for the even rows, rotate your blocks and place the 5-inch squares on the right side. Then, as always, sew your blocks together to form rows, and lastly, sew your rows together to complete your quilt top. Here is what my Lazy Days quilt pattern looks like all finished. For the backing, I am using a print from within the collection. Then for the thread choice, I am going with glide threads in the color Seafoam Green. And here is what my quilt looks like all quilted. Once again, one layer cake will yield a 54-inch by 63-inch quilt. If you use two layer cake bundles and instead make a total of 63 quilt blocks while placing them in a 7 by 9 block layout, you will yield a large twin size quilt measuring at 63 inches by 81 inches to give you a few more options. But if you could please take a moment to hit that like and subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you can be notified for your next amazing quilt project.